Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar put on by IoT America. We are starting our Smart Town webinar series. Today is the first of 3 webinars we will do on the subject of Smart Town. Greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your day. In some cases, we may be providing a little relief to what has become the new normal. But appreciate you taking the time to join us. We've got 2 good speakers, a lot of information to present, and to put a foundation which we will build on with subsequent webinars. So I want to touch on a couple housekeeping rules to let everybody know. We have everybody muted, with the exception of the panelists. We will have 2 polls during the webinar. We're going to try to gauge some information, fact-based poll, opinion-based poll. So please just take a minute, click it. We'll give roughly a minute to let everybody respond, and we'll share the results. The raised hand and chat features that Ring Central provides in its webinar platform, those have been deactivated. We ask that you use the Q&A means to present questions to us that we will answer at the end of the webinar, as well as if there's an issue, feel free to present that in the Q&A features. So our goal is to answer as many of the questions possible that come in. No guarantee we'll get to them all. If we do not answer your question on the webinar and you've identified who you are in asking the question, we will follow up with you post-webinar and provide some clarification and some answers to the points that you raised. And at the end, we will have a short survey when we conclude today's webinar. And we greatly appreciate the feedback we get. We take it to heart. We take action upon the feedback we get. So, and to encourage as many of you as possible to take that little bit of time and fill out that survey that will be sent to you. We will award a $15 gift card to Starbucks. So, to one person from the pool. So our speakers today, I am Bob Marr, I'm the VP of Sales for IoT America, and I serve as kind of the moderator of today's webinar. First speaking, Peter Lai, VP of Strategic Alliances with IoT America. And then our guest speaker, Carlos Briceno, VP of the Americas for Kerlink. So we will, our agenda, Peter's going to give you a little bit of background on LP WAN. Carlos is going to get into the best practices to deploy a Smart Town. I'll provide just a little bit of a wrapper at the end on IoT America, use cases, the managed services piece, and then we will have time for questions and answers. Peter.
Bob, yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone. As Bob mentioned, we greatly appreciate your time today in joining us on this webinar. We hope that you will find this information helpful. And as always, if you have any additional questions, suggestions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us and we will be more than happy to follow with you individually. With that being said, can you switch the slide, please? Great. So I wanted to just start off a little bit on just the market overview in general for IoT connectivity. Obviously, there are many different options when we look at approaching a smart town, an enterprise, a smart city, or even a SMB, right? I mean, all in all, the way we approach is that I think from a network perspective and from a technology perspective, the differences and diversity in network protocols really help provide a plethora of different solutions, hardware applications out there today that anybody can look at and say, you know what, this makes sense, we like it, right? But it's just so many out there today, so what do we do about it? The competition is great, and then it does build a market, and in essence, really drive new use cases. 5G has made a great impact. It's all over the news. People talk about 5G and what it can do, what it should do. But when we look at a smart town, we want to just understand, a couple of differences, right? We're not really looking at a type of apples to apples comparison when it comes to networks. But we want to make the clear, decisive approach on what works best for the town in terms of their priorities, whether it's citizen satisfaction, environmental, productivity, or resource management. What is it that is top priority for the town, that then we can point to the right solution utilizing the right network and backhaul to accomplish that. When we talk to 5G, because it is still really kind of the hot topic for IoT, 5G really, in essence, may not be suitable for all use cases. Yes, the fact that we can utilize low latency and high bandwidth is very crucial for mission critical solutions. But when you talk about the need for video and augmented reality or autonomous vehicles, that's there. We understand that. But when we look at IoT solutions for smart town that may only require low data packets or devices that only send every so often or on a set schedule, that may not be mission critical, then 5G just may be too much for it, right? The idea is that when we look at solutions and look at networks, we want to be sure that it's the right approach the first time around. So the next slide, please. That leads me to a little bit of when we talk about LPWAN, what's out there today, right? So there are two pillars of LPWAN solutions. They're the non-cellular flavor and they're the cellular flavor. So when we talk about cellular, you have NB-IoT and LTE Cat-M that's in the US today. And then also when we look at non-cellular, we have LoRaWAN and Sigfox. Now, even when we break down LPWAN in its siloed features and functions and benefits and advantages, we understand that, again, depending on the solution, depending on what you want to accomplish as a smart town, will help us decide what fits better for your needs, right? Let's focus on LoRaWAN, for example. LoRaWAN today is available in over 100 countries and over 80 network operators. That's huge, right? So that, the maturity of LoRaWAN is greatly increasing as more and more use cases and as more and more needs are being asked of the market, from the market. Many real-world, challenges today that need immediate solutions, right? So when you look at the catalog or the portfolio of available opportunities or solutions from asset management, metering, tank level, waste management, all of those are really available today for all of these, of course, but LoRaWAN in particular because of the specific use case where infrequent communication, low payload is there, right? So let's go into the differences there. When we look at why we choose LoRaWAN for smart towns, we have to really identify the 4 key elements of a LoRaWAN network, right? The first and foremost is the low cost from a total cost of ownership for maintaining and building the infrastructure. Battery life for LoRaWAN is tremendous in terms of when you compare it to a cellular device, right? In some cases, you can achieve 10 plus years. In reality, you could probably do 5 to 7 plus, but even at that level, the cost for somebody to come out, manually replace batteries is not cheap, especially for a city or a town. So to reduce that is a great advantage. When you look at the network benefits, right? LoRaWAN versus cellular, 5G, 4G. One of the great things about using a sub-gig network is in-building penetration, right? And or any type of use cases that rely obviously the signal to go through the walls, especially in the case when you're monitoring metering and any type of water leak. That's huge for LoRaWAN because when you obviously compare the benefits of that versus the cellular technologies that are hovering in above the 2 gigahertz range, then that's really one of the, I'd say one of the limitations of a cellular network. From a security perspective, right, bi-directional communication is key when you look at a smart town need, as well as the encryption. LoRaWAN supports AES 120-bit keys, one for the network in itself, very similar to, I'd say, like a eSIM, right? So from a device authentication to the network and the device authentication to via APN, but also then there's security around the device to the application as well. So two AES keys is a great feature when you think about securing a LoRaWAN network. So that's, from our standpoint, when you approach smart towns, it's key to look at it from a multi-RAN strategy, right? At a high level, what problems are we trying to solve? And then from there, drill down to the micro level. Okay, now let's start to look at what are the pain points. Is it the TCO? Is it the battery? Is it the network and security? All of which LoRaWAN can accomplish easily today. Okay, Bob, back to you.
Yes, sorry, I was trying to unmute it. System wasn't letting me. All right, so at this point, we're going to interject our first poll, which should be popping up on your screen. There we go. So in your opinion, which of the following presents the biggest challenge for municipalities when implementing IoT solutions? Your 5 choices are infrastructure or scalability, security and privacy, education and awareness, regulation that might exist, and then total cost, ownership, and return on investment. So if you could just take a second, which of those 5 do you think would be the biggest challenge for municipalities? All right, as we let the data come in, there's a man behind the curtain responsible for pulling the trigger and providing us the feedback. There we go. So our opinion poll, there's a third people feel it's infrastructure and scalability. A third believe that it is total cost ownership, return on investment. And I think those two would go hand in hand when you think about in terms of what that cost is to have the infrastructure. How do you scale it? How do you make sure you're getting the return on that investment to scale it? Security, privacy, education, and good to see that regulation is not getting in the way of deployments in most people's opinion. So appreciate the you guys with that. At this point, we will turn the webinar over to Carlos Briceno, who is VP of Americas for Kerlink, one of our technology partners that we are very pleased to work with. Carlos.
Thank you, Bob. I'd like to thank IoT America for the invitation to speak today about smart towns and what to think about when you are deploying an IoT network and addressing connected solutions or smart town projects. I also like to thank all the people that are showing up today. Appreciate your time. So I'm going to start by introducing Kerlink, which aside from knowing who we are, it kind of will give you a context to the information that I will share today. So Kerlink has been around since 2004. When we started the company, we started designing connected solutions based on the technology that was available at that time. This included solutions for fleet management, remote metering, etc. And we used different technologies like cellular and for example, WM bus, which is a technology specifically for remote metering. When LoRaWAN was developed, Kerlink recognized that this technology could finally enable a great number of solutions that were not possible with the technologies of the time, and even that is the case today. From Kerlink point of view, we have a strong commitment to the LoRa technology, which is represented by the investment that we have made in the last 3 years, which is more than 15, $17 million in the last 3 years, as I mentioned. We are a founding member and a board member of the LoRa Alliance, which is the organization in charge of managing this LoRaWAN standard. We also became ISO certified in 2016. Today, we're the leading supplier of LoRaWAN infrastructure in the world. Today we have, I will say that about 90% of the most established LoRaWAN IoT public operators are using Kerlink equipment. Our customer base spans over 75 countries, and today we have the largest installed base of gateways in the world. So our customers range from a customer that has a one gateway network, like a retail store. But you can stay on that slide. The previous slide. You can stay on the Kerlink there. Thank you. So today our customers, as I mentioned, they range from a customer that has a one gateway network. This could be a retail store, a farm, etc., to municipalities, and to the largest LoRaWAN network in the world. So we are certainly proud of the confidence that our customers have placed on us. But the point here is that this market reach has also given us the opportunities to see and have a view over what has worked globally. And specifically in today's case, is related to smart city, smart town deployments. Next slide. So when it comes to smart town, what we hear a lot about smart cities, smart towns. What does it really mean? Whether it's a city, a town, a village, a county, the term smart X, smart county, smart town is a big umbrella. It could mean many things. Towns have similarities, but each one has its own specific needs. Or their own specific plans for the city and its citizens. So here's, in this list, we kind of show the typical, I would say, use cases that we see when people are talking about smart town. So on the left, we see energy, utility uses, like smart metering, the typical metering, but also sub-metering. This could be trying to understand what the usage is within a building beyond the meter from the water utility. Network monitoring, in the case of, for example, water utilities, they want to see how the water network is doing, leakage and things like that. Predictive maintenance covers a wide range of uses. Any equipment out there that is functioning needs to be monitored. And the idea here is to predict when that equipment is going to needs maintenance. And the idea here is that you don't want to do maintenance when it's not necessary, or wait too long to do the maintenance and have the equipment break down. Transport is kind of a general also category. This could be bike car sharing. Bike sharing is becoming popular. Even the scooters is another popular means of transportation in some places. Tracking bus routes. This can give a visibility of timing and different things that the cities may be looking to do. This could be also city buses. It could be school districts, etc. Traffic light monitoring, to make sure that they're working, and when there's a failure, you're notified that something is not working at that moment, and not wait until a citizen makes a complaint. And traffic controls, it could be railroad crossings, it could be all kinds of different things where you may need to know what is going on in the city or town. Town operation, its own town operation. So this is a smart parking. This is a big city problem, but it's also a small city problem. It could be, especially cities that receive a lot of visitors from outside, whether it's a tourist town, etc. You may want to manage the parking in the downtown area or areas where people gather. Smart waste is a very popular one. All cities are concerned with managing waste. You don't want to have too much and uncollected, or and make better decisions about waste management. Smart lighting is another use case. Cases like this, obviously, if a light is out, you want to know if it's out. And also make decisions. So maybe you want to dim the lighting at night in certain areas where there is no traffic. Environmental, many use cases of environmental, air pollution, CO2 monitoring, earthquakes, sensors in certain areas of the country where that is a problem, but it could be flood sensors, etc. And then we go to public buildings or facilities. These are city facilities. It could be other organizations where the city may have an interest. And you can monitor heating usage, water usage, obviously smoke detectors and things like that. Obviously, people say, well, we have smoke detectors. But LoRaWAN allows you to, because of the wireless capabilities, to install smoke detectors where you don't need cabling. So there may be additional uses for smoke detectors, leak detectors, those type of things. Occupancy detectors, you want to see how much room is being used or a building. This is actually very, very interesting right now because of the COVID-19. There are needs to understand where people are gathering, the traffic that certain areas may be seeing. There are definitely more use cases today and more to come in the future, but this is kind of a sample of what we see. The one thing that all smart towns share is the need to collect and analyze data from different places within the city, whether it's a building, city parks, garbage bins, etc., and get it to a place where they can use it. Next slide, please. So how do we get this data? How do we get this sensor data? And Peter talked a little bit about that. I'll expand a little bit on it. So there are different technologies that can be used to transmit data. These are a list of the most typical communication technologies that are normally considered when we're thinking about getting data from one place to the other. And the idea here is that this data can be collected, evaluated, analyzed, so the town can make decisions. So these technologies here are complementary, and they all have their own advantages. If we start with the fixed or copper or fiber, these technologies can move a lot of data. So primarily these are used for backhaul communication. It's really hard to connect a wireless sensor or a remote sensor using fiber. Cellular is obviously a known technology to all of us. It is a known technology to city governments, primarily designed for voice and high data, even though there are different variations. And today, it provides services to departments within the municipality in the city. The cities carry phones and data and provide data services so they can use it to communicate. Police and fire departments use to communicate and transmit mobile data. And then we come to LoRaWAN. So LoRaWAN, what's interesting about it is that it's a wireless technology that was created specifically for IoT, which is different than cellular. Cellular was primarily designed for voice and has high-speed data. So LoRaWAN, because it was designed specifically for IoT, has some inherent benefits for that. So the great majority of IoT smart town use cases today and in the future, and even IoT solutions in general, are the ones that will be best addressed by LoRa. And these are, again, remote meters, environmental sensors, battery-operated sensors of any kind, garbage bins, etc. So these are very good use cases for LoRaWAN. Then there's an array of short-range technologies that can be used for certain use cases, in which range or battery life are not needed. An example is Wi-Fi cameras. These are you connect it locally, and they need bandwidth. So the Wi-Fi may be a suitable technology for that. So what is important, and Peter alluded to that, is the importance to understand the capabilities of the available technologies in order to make the best decisions for the right use cases. Next slide, please. So I'm going to expand a little bit of what Peter talked about. These are the main features for LoRaWAN. So as I mentioned, this technology was designed specifically for Internet of Things. So these are the main characteristics. Peter mentioned that the long range, the range right now for LoRaWAN is slightly better than cellular. So this allows cities to install a network and have a long reach within the city. It minimizes the deployment of the infrastructure. But just as important as the long range, one of the key also benefits of LoRaWAN is the deep indoor coverage. This allows in-building or smart facility use cases where in-building penetration maybe it could be basements. For example, in some cities, the smart meters or the meters are a meter or 3 feet underground, 6 feet underground. LoRa is able to pick up those signals and relay that information to a central area. So it's very efficient when it comes to that. The maximum lifetime of the device. So these are battery-operated wireless devices for the most part, not necessarily all the time. So this allows for a lot of use cases where you want to connect the sensor, you want to install the sensor, deploy the sensor, and you don't want to have to send people to recharge or change batteries all the time. Once you start sending city workers or anybody to change batteries, then your cost increases. Okay. Multi-usage is a high-capacity network, flexible enough to allow towns to create public and private access to it, actually. So you can obviously you use this for the city benefits, but you can also give access to community colleges, high schools, or the governmental agency, even local startups. In a sense, it can actually be used also for a means for economic development. So the ease of deployment, I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. There is a minimal infrastructure. The devices are low cost. You can have location solutions. You are able to locate these devices outdoor and indoor with minimum battery impact, which is different than some GPS devices that may consume battery quite a bit. It's bidirectional. Peter mentioned that. Again, LoRaWAN is a global standard. So it's important consideration here. That means that there are, for example, the LoRa Alliance has 500 members. So a lot of these are devices. So new devices, new use cases come. As long as the device is a LoRaWAN certified standard device, you can add it to your use cases. And then the security, as Peter mentioned, it's a security from the device to the network, device to the application. So these are the main characteristics of a LoRaWAN network. Next slide, please. So we can see that LoRaWAN is a clear, great choice for a smart town. But what should I think about to make it a success? As I mentioned, we are fortunate enough to have a market reach that allows us to see what's worked in different places. Obviously, different places have different needs and different characteristics, but they all share these keys to a successful implementation. Today, I will talk about 3 main keys to a successful implementation of an IoT LoRaWAN network to support your smart town deployment and development. The first key is choosing the right infrastructure. This seems like an obvious thing, but choosing a reliable field-proven hardware gateway is key in order to maximize your investment. You basically want to install once and not have to touch them again, at least for a long time. The idea, again, is that you don't want to have resources going to having to touch the infrastructure. It should be reliable enough that you don't have to worry about it, you forget about it. The idea, from our point of view, we want you to forget about Kerlink, in essence. There's another component in a LoRaWAN network. Is the gateway and the network server, or the network management platform. These are 2 components that make up a network. So what is important also is to have a tightly integrated gateway network server solution, which will allow you to better monitor, update, manage the network. These 2 points minimize the maintenance costs and it improves reliability. The other point that I already mentioned is investing in a technology that is standardized. LoRaWAN is a standard. So this assures you that the investment today will be viable next year and years from now, basically future-proof. The implementation is to be easy as possible. For a LoRaWAN network, rooftops, water towers, fire stations, other city buildings and facilities can be used to install gateways. Here I included some photos, actual photos of some of the examples of installations that we've seen in smart cities. On the left, we see a gateway, which is what you see in the middle, the small box in the middle. This looks like it could be from a fire station or another city facility where the city is already using it for other communications. So this infrastructure, if you will, can be used to install a LoRaWAN network or a LoRaWAN gateway. The next photo to the right is this is more of a rooftop installation. It just requires a pole, and you're able to easily install a gateway. And because of the reach of these gateways, a single gateway can have a big coverage. And on the upper right is a slightly different implementation I will call this a city building. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a rooftop. This looks like some kind of railing on the side of the building, high, but not necessarily on top of the building. So another way to install. And then on the lower right is an installation in a seems like a structure of a bridge. I'm sure it's not public, over a waterway. So this allows for different use cases and different options when you need to install the LoRaWAN infrastructure. Next slide, please. So the other two keys to a successful implementation, I'll speak about the second one, is to have a holistic approach. So the idea here is to have a view of the big picture. What are the goals that this town wants to reach? What do you want to accomplish? But then start in phases in order to accomplish those goals. This is kind of like the saying goes, how do you eat an elephant? You eat a bite at a time. And this is how these projects should be viewed in phases. And what can you accomplish in an initial period of time? So the idea is to start identifying use cases that have initial impact or address immediate needs. So related to that point, it's important to find the internal and external stakeholders that can help you define and implement these solutions. So these stakeholders could be internal personnel within the city from different departments. It could be organizations that are connected to the city or independent from the city. It could be citizen groups, etc. These are groups that will see the benefits and can contribute to the identifying the use cases that are important to the city and to its citizens, and can also obviously benefit from the initial solutions. So in a sense, this can become your initial your internal or external champions for these projects. It's very important to have a buy-in from the citizens of the town. And then the third key is the glue that brings all this together. Is finding the right solutions partner that can work with you to identify and define those needs that can be addressed by IoT. The idea is to work with this partner to come up with and share the big picture, the holistic approach, but they can work with you to implement the different phases and guide you and discuss with you what are the phases and how they will look to implement a smart town project. So these solution partners will bring all the components necessary, will bring the infrastructure, when I call infrastructure, the hardware, the gateways, the network management platform, the integration of that infrastructure with a proven portfolio of solutions that can also be integrated with the internal systems and processes. The idea here is to work with this solutions partner to define what is better, what is the best approach for your town. And like I mentioned, each town may have similarities, but we all have specific needs based on where we live. They should provide the support you need through the initial implementation, as I mentioned, and work with you through these phases. They should have the expertise needed to provide you with valuable data that allows you to make this best decision possible today for the phased approach and also for the actual use cases that you want to implement. So in summary, the proven, you can stay in that slide. The three components are field proven and robust infrastructure, a phased approach, a holistic point of view with a phased approach, and also the right solution partner to help you develop and deploy a successful smart town project. The next slide. So I'm going to finish my presentation with showing you a couple of examples that illustrate how a couple of cities that we have worked with have used these key points to implement successful smart city, smart towns. So the town of, or the city of Bordeaux is a city of about 250,000 people. They put together a team, an internal team that worked with a solutions partner to develop the plan, as I mentioned, and identify initial use cases. In this case, the initial phase included about 500 sensors. 200 of those are public street lights. That was what they wanted to accomplish initially. They have electric vehicle charging stations. It's mostly bikes, e-bikes. And also they wanted to manage the waste management. In a sense, I mentioned this is waste management is a popular use case. And they also implemented some solutions for their public buildings of different types. I mentioned how to manage their energy use, environmental, those type of things. So this is the city of Bordeaux. There's a quote that the city, that the head of the digital city that's in charge of this project said, quote, we are all the more aware of cooperation as the community, which he means the city, no longer has internal engineering to develop these solutions itself. And that's, I mentioned the third point, the key point, is to find a solution partner that can help you develop these things. The next slide, please. Now, the city of Rennes started addressing the project by addressing the waste management and disposal needs. They wanted to monitor garbage bins and optimize the collection of these bins. Basically created smart garbage collection routes, basically knowing which garbage bins are, in a simplistic way, which ones are full, which ones are empty. This allows them to be more efficient. Obviously, for a town, you don't want to have garbage bins overflowing. So you want to send the collection when they are almost at the top. At the same time, you don't want to send your trucks and your resources to empty a bin that is empty. So this is a way to manage your resources in an efficient way. They also launched some public building monitoring, smart buildings, energy monitoring, leak detection, environmental information that they wanted to gather from their public buildings. And then now, that was a phase one, as I mentioned. And now they're working on next phases, which includes smart lighting, smart parking, watering. This has to do with irrigation of public areas, public parks, etc. So one of the interesting things is that in these projects includes opening the network for local access beyond the city government or to citizens and startups, for example. So these are obviously the garbage bins and the watering and all this are benefits to the citizens. But now they're able to directly benefit citizens by giving them access to this, and also local businesses, which may contribute to economic development. So I'd like to end my presentation by quoting a city personnel, a person from the city of Bordeaux involved in the smart city project there. She said, the smart city projects, she said, quote, is a sort of Lego game taking shape. We are advancing little by little, end quote. She also added, with the LoRa network, the city will be able to deploy connected objects in the future that it does not yet imagine today. So this is, I mentioned, this is the LoRa network that they've implemented is a foundation for today. They're able to address use cases today, but it's a foundation for the future. They know that there are use cases that are coming that they don't even think about, but they will be coming. This is my presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos.
Yes.
Appreciate the insight. You shared some great examples and some great data. At this point, we will have our second poll posted. This one will be a little bit more fact-based. So, Colin, if you could put the poll up. There we go. What percentage of U.S. municipalities under 1 million in population have publicly announced participation in at least one smart city, smart town initiative? So again, it's a percentage of U.S. municipalities, and we're talking about under 1 million in population have announced that they're going to at least one smart city, smart town initiative. Just give everybody here a minute. You're right. I think, Colin, if you can kind of compile the answers. I'm curious, unless you're still getting a plethora coming in here. All right. So the majority of people in the poll feel it's the between 15 and 25%. And it's right around 40-ish if I have my data correct. Approximately 40% of 1 million population. And then, you know, when you get a little bit smaller, less than 150,000 people, we're only talking a small handful, 7%. And in that between 150 and a million, it's around 35%. So by and large, our audience was pretty dead on with their feelings versus what is actual fact. All right. Very good. So I want to just take a couple minutes here. Appreciate everybody's opportunity and just kind of give you some flavor for IoT America. So IoT America is a managed service provider, and this first slide that we've got here kind of, I think, is a great graphic from a standpoint of the overall look of a smart town. And, you know, Carlos made a great comment. We might move to where it's the Smart X, where we did fiber to the home, fiber to the, you know, FTTX type of thing. Smart X, you've got a smart town, you've got a smart city, you've got a smart campus, you've got a smart university, you've got a smart farm. It's really nice from a standpoint of it's one network. So you can build out a single network that covers multiple use cases and over time. And we're showing right now the use cases available in the marketplace with IoT America that would apply to a smart town, and again, a Smart X scenario. So things like asset tracking, irrigation management, the parking management that was discussed earlier, that's a big need, probably the biggest need that we're seeing, Carlos is seeing worldwide, waste management.
Yes.
It probably has the greatest return on investment, and it can prove itself valuable. Soil management for the landscaping. What's nice is, you know, there's the economical benefits as a municipality deploys a smart town scenario with that network, you can expand that coverage and provide it to local businesses. You can generate a revenue stream. Private businesses that might be in the area that might want to do temperature and humidity within their office building. Or in the smart town in rural America that we're looking at predominantly, these smart towns are surrounded by farmland. And that network has the ability to expand out to the neighboring farms and provide an opportunity to do the smart farm, but provide that service as a municipality and generate revenue off of that. The phase solution that Carlos talked about. So you deploy that network, and again, waste management is a great way to justify the cost of deploying that network. And then you can start adding elements piece by piece. You can deploy the parking management one. You can add temperature and humidity as the needs. You can also add more and more use cases as they become available to the marketplace. So the next slide. So IoT right now is not just for early adopters. You've got a situation where people are adopting it today. People see the need. We're starting to see a decent percentage of people talking about it, but more and more towns are going to be moving. And as they move forward with this deployment, are they going to understand and fully comprehend what's ahead of them? It's a different technology. It's moving to an area that there's a little bit of uncomfortableness. It's not a simple cut and paste solution. Very much like it's presented in the consumer world, where you get a Nest thermostat over, off of Amazon, and you plug it in and boom, you run with it. When you start talking about a LoRa network, it's simple, but it's complex. So there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of issues that have to be wrestled with. But if you've got the knowledge and understanding, it's a very easy thing to deploy and go forward with. And that's where a managed services provider in the IoT space can help. If we can help that city start today. And I think that's a key thing. And we talked about data. Data is huge, and data is the most critical thing that's going to come out of this. Well, starting today is going to give you data that will have value in 10 years, in 3 years, as you start to look at trends and you start to manage things. So that data's value is going to increase over time. But in order to have that data in 3 years, you have to start collecting it today. I like to use that analogy. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Well, the second best time is today. So what we want to look at is, what can we do, IoT America as a managed service provider, to help cities, towns, municipalities start to gather that data, take those first steps forward. Next slide. So we are a managed service provider, and I think it's important to note we focus on IoT. There are other managed services providers in the enterprise space dealing with other technologies. We are specialized in IoT. We're there to help businesses, municipalities, make that decision. How do they grasp what's going on? Where's that increase in efficiency can come from? How does they enhance what they want to do, save resources, protect assets? There's a lot of things that tie into this. It's the essence of who we are. It's what we do every day, is how does IoT add value to where it's being deployed? We're that glue that Carlos talked about. Next slide. Some of the frustration barriers that we have seen, these are firsthand comments that we've seen in the marketplace. 61% of people that deploy IoT have trouble getting equipment to talk to each other. They start looking at the manufacturer's directions and what might be stated and try to do it themselves. How do they get this sensor to talk to the network? Then they try to dial and talk to a manufacturer, and it's more, warranty claims, and it's your network's issue. It's not the sensor's issue, and then vice versa. We've heard directly from customers that quote of, "My problem with technology is that I spend a lot of money on it, and then I forget how to use it." Our perspective is, shame on the person that sold you that technology. Our job is to make sure you understand and get that value. We're proactively working with the customers that are in the marketplace to make sure it's being deployed the right way. The data is coming in. It is being transmitted and being captured by the network. It's coming back on the app server the way the end client wants it. And we also help that inability, that noise I talked about. If you Google IoT and you look, you can buy it from 1,000 places online. But how do you know that product's going to work? How do you know that product's got the battery life you need? It's going to talk to the network that you want. That's where a managed service provider like IoT comes in. And the other key thing we bring to the table in municipalities is we can help kind of diffuse that silo mentality that exists. So in municipalities, you've got Department of Transportation, and maybe you've got Department of Public Works, and you've got the ground crews, and different people have different budgets, and they want to deploy technology within their silo, not understanding the value that a holistic deployment can have across multiple departments and multiple silos. And coming in as the managed service provider, we can help build those bridges and talk about the overall use case and what that value is. Because that network put up that's going to measure where that garbage truck is in the city is also going to help determine, when does those parks and recs garbage cans need to be emptied so you don't have aesthetic issues and things like that. That's part of where we can come in is to fuse those competing budgets and make it a holistic deployment. So the big thing that we're doing, next slide, please. Again, we want to overcome that lack of knowledge and expertise. Not everybody knows what's going on in IoT. Not everybody's staffing up their own IoT department or having individuals in there. And by doing that, we can overcome sort of that fear, that uncertainty, that doubt, and we can save money by being the expert with that. We can help municipalities stay current on technology and innovation. Again, new things are coming down the line. There's hype, there's buzz about new use cases. Not often is there a timetable with that hype and that buzz where we'll have a feeling of where it is in the marketplace and is it able to be deployed today and what's that value you're going to get back. There's a piece of hardware you can install, great, but are you going to get the data back with the app server on the back end that meets your needs? In a lot of cases, no. People that build very good hardware on the front end might not necessarily be the best ones that build software on the back end. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's improving the quality of life for citizens. It's why towns are deploying this. How do they make it better, make it a more desirable place for businesses to locate, for people to want to come to the cities and the towns when we're all allowed to get out of our homes and do that, right? And how do you leverage that data for efficient town management? At the end of the day, if technology doesn't pay for itself, then why deploy it? Yeah, it's nice, it's cool, it's fancy, but the data that's provided is going to be able to improve efficient operations. It's going to be able to save money. It's going to be able to have time and allocation of resources dedicated elsewhere to improve other areas of the city. Headaches and distractions. Let's see if we can get them off the table. And again, one of the nice things with a managed service provider that we provide, you've got that cost-effective balance of OpEx versus CapEx. Sometimes people look at deploying these networks and it's a big CapEx. I've got to spend thousands of dollars in order to get this network deployed. With a managed service provider, it becomes more of an OpEx question. And you can kind of amortize your CapEx expenses over an OpEx budget. It becomes a little bit more palatable and easier to digest, especially today. Municipalities and towns are not rich with cash and will be even worse off coming out of what we're going through with COVID-19, the lack of revenue coming in, added expenses that are being deployed. So technology that can help balance CapEx versus OpEx to improve return on investments, it's going to be a welcomed relief. Next slide, Colin. Oh, all right, last slide. So before we do that, we should have had a Q&A, but what we're going to do, we're going to jump into Q&A. And real quick, before we jump into the Q&A, touch on these things. Again, you're going to get a short survey. It's going to be sent following the webinar. Please fill it out. We love the value, the feedback we get. You'll get your name thrown in the hat for a $15 gift card at Starbucks. All of our webinars are recorded. So this one will be posted on the website. Our previous ones around soil are already there. And then look for announcements on our second and third in the series of Smart Town webinars that we're doing. And I'm gonna jump in. I've got a couple questions here. So if you've been holding off on a question, you probably have an opportunity to get it in where we'll probably be able to answer it. I'm gonna answer the first question myself, and then I'm gonna turn the second question over to Carlos and Peter. The question came in with regards to, we talk about all these use cases and the sensors, and that there's this need for them to be approved. And where do you get them to kind of present that use case to municipalities and such? And IoT America, as a managed service provider, is making sure the sensors that are out there are validated, trusted, and they work on the network. It's not as simple as purchasing a sensor online and it will talk to your LoRa gateway. They have to be configured. because of that security that Carlos talked about. That sensor's got to talk to that gateway, and then it's also got to be able to relay that data back to the application server, and both of those have security keys to protect the security of the unit. So we're doing the heavy lifting, as I like to say. We're making sure that these sensors are validated. They have the battery life. They have the ruggedness to be deployed in the environments they're being asked to be deployed. They're going to provide the data that's needed. And they're also being manufactured and supported by a company that's going to be here. If the battery is going to last 7 years, we want the company to be here for 7 years. So a lot of work goes in. So we're deploying the whole network as a managed service provider. It's not, hey, we're going to give you this product, good luck with it. And I'll go back to what I said with people that buy technology and have that situation. They buy it, they don't know what to do with it, and then they're not getting the value out of it. So Peter and Carlos, I think Carlos, this one might fit you. You know, we're doing a webinar here in IoT America, but we've got a question from Hamburg, Germany. So welcome to the World Wide Web, where LoRa has a greater foothold than it does in the States. It's a little bit more mature there. And his question is, he talks about the LoRaWAN ecosystem has got significantly more IoT devices than other ecosystems, possibly narrowband IoT. Especially in the area of metering. So is there a similar trend in the USA? Does the trend look different? And the trend being LoRaWAN devices versus other ecosystem devices for IoT?
Yeah, so the question is, you know, what is seen in the LoRaWAN ecosystem in Europe, in Germany, is more IoT devices available for LoRaWAN than NB-IoT. Which is to the point that we were making earlier, that you know, LoRa is here and it has the capability to address a lot of the use cases that are needed for smart town. And in the U.S., we see the same thing. We see more availability of LoRaWAN devices or sensors for the U.S. as opposed to other technologies, the NB-IoT and these new technologies. They're not there yet, and a lot of the use cases they cannot address. But we do see a trend of more and more devices and sensors for the LoRaWAN ecosystem in the U.S.
Peter, is there anything?
Yeah, and I want to add, right, you know, when we look at LPWAN in general, Carlos, you know, Bob, you also mentioned it too, right? In the U.S., you know, especially when we talk about, let's just highlight NB-IoT, right? You know, NB-IoT in the US probably started, I would say, 1 or 2 years behind Europe and Asia. So while Europe and Asia were deploying NB-IoT in the US, it's, you know, the carriers landed on category M for LTE rather than go straight to NB-IoT. Now they have various reasons why, but in the US, when we look at cellular, just look at cellular compared to LoRaWAN, right? To Carlos' point, right, in LoRaWAN, because the inherent features of the network and the frequency itself makes it beneficial for metering. You know, you're still finding metering solutions out there today for these LPWAN services like Cat-M. Not so much NB-IoT just yet, because I think NB-IoT finally became more of a commercial network here in the US about last year, 2019. So what we're seeing obviously is that the solutions out there today, you know, cities and towns, they need help. They want this problem of being able to remotely capture readings, you know, without having to send somebody out on a route every day. They need those solutions today. And what's out there today in the US are typically in a 3G, you know, type of connection still. Because in the US, carriers have, although they have announced that they will sunset networks for 3G, we will still see those networks around at least for another 2 to 3 years. So cities and towns are looking at it. Okay, we understand that, but we have to evolve. We need to upgrade the solutions. But we can't wait for NB-IoT. We can't wait for this because they're not there. And then when you do tests in terms of battery life, cost of the device, cost of the network, LoRaWAN just makes sense, right? So to Carlos' point, and obviously, you know, Bob mentioned it again, right? LoRaWAN in the US has definitely gone a huge advantage in the LPWAN space. And we don't foresee that to change for quite a while.
Very good. Thanks, Peter. So I've got another question here where they talk about what is the smallest community for which this kind of called Smart X, Smart City, Smart Town, makes sense. Would it make sense for something as small as a homeowners association in maybe like a living complex? Carlos, have you seen any of those that small of a deployment?
Yes, actually, yes. We've seen, it all depends on the use case and the need, but we have seen in communities where the sub-metering part, for example, we've seen that. We see for environmental needs. Depends on the needs. We've seen use cases, for example, in it's a little different, but marinas, right? That people live on boats. That's a community in a sense. You know, I think the key is to understand what is it that you're trying to solve, and what is it that the information you're trying to do. But yeah, I mean, we have, as I mentioned in at the beginning, our customers range from a person or a company or a retail store that has a one gateway to address their needs. So yes, it definitely makes sense. It's just to understand what the need is.
Right, and I think that goes back to the comment that I made with regards to Smart X. I mean, these use cases are very similar. So it can be a farm, it can be a college campus, it can be a marina like you talked about. It's really, you know, we'll look at how to help those clients look at the return on investment, what it's going to cost to deploy the equipment, manage it, versus what the economic value is to all the end users. All right, well, we've extended our time. We appreciate the many of you who are still with us. We've gone over the 1 hour. Appreciate it. The couple questions that did come in that we did not get a chance to answer live, we will follow up and provide those answers to you. Again, appreciate it. If there's any needs, I think one more slide. Do we have one more slide there, Colin? I think it's got contact information. All right, well, that's my contact information. Carlos had his earlier, but feel free if you want to get in touch with either Peter or Carlos, you didn't capture their contact information, I can forward that to you if you've got an interest. Again, appreciate everybody's time. We at IoT America wish that all are staying well, staying healthy. Looking forward to when we all can move ahead in a much more rich and robust and engaging way. So thank you, everybody.